Hey guys, it's William again, back with a brand new video. This one is my worst books I read list. And a few things to mention, apart from the fact that my Christmas tree is gorgeous. One is that only one of these books that I am mentioning was released this year. This isn't a worst books that were released this year video, this is the worst books that I've read this year video. And that's because sometimes I decide a book that was released a few years ago still looks interesting today, maybe there's a sequel to it that's out this year, and maybe I'm given a recommendation by a friend. But the second one is that I never intend to hurt someone's feelings whenever I do a negative review, and I always have to think about that every time I hit post for a bashing review. And so if you liked any of these books, then that is terrific, and I encourage you to reach out to me on why you enjoyed it, and also tell your friends why you enjoyed it as well. I am always open to hearing other views on books. It's what the book community is all about. And also, if you're one of the authors of any of these books, which is a hard stretch, but let's say you are, even though I didn't like your book, there are hundreds, thousands of people across the world who do like it. So please, I hope that you don't have a bad day over this video, and I hope anyone who loved any of these books doesn't have a bad day over it either. Now just a heads up, which I also gave at the start of my best book video, I am more of a blogger than a vlogger. All of my reviews are typed, and they are all up on a website I own called weldonwitness.com, and now I have a brand new one called williammcginnbooks.wordpress.com that I'm really working on right now. And sometime in 2020, I'm thinking about becoming a video reviewer. I feel that that would be a lot of fun and would reach even more people. Though right now I'm too busy to do that, and when that begins, the videos won't have as much quality as this one. But anyway, yeah. So without further ado, let's begin. Number 10. So the first book is Welcome to the Dark House by Lori Faria Stolars. I could see what she was trying to do, and that was do all sorts of things that horror fans like. And it's that make characters that are actually really three-dimensional and come up with some jump scares and make fun of jump scares by showing how crazy they are, as well as have some very nice brutality and unexpected deaths. But I feel like this one tried to incorporate every single thing, even though they didn't mesh well. There ends up being so many jump scares that are falsified to make us more excited for an unexpected to when the stuff really hits the fan, but honestly, by the time it actually does, I was just tired of it and I was just annoyed with it. But I do want to read the sequel more than any other book on this list that has a sequel, so honestly, I put it at number 10. Number 9. So, the number 9 spot goes to The Clouded Sky by Megan Crew. It's a sequel to her book Earth and Sky, and I read it way back in 2016. I remember when I first got it out of the library and here at my local town, and I brought it with me to Oshawa. But my point is that, well, Earth and Sky, what I liked about it the most was its constant racing. It was a time travel adventure through everywhere, and the protagonists constantly had trackers on them. There was no way to really avoid that. And The Clouded Sky, it goes with a mystery, and this mystery is centered around the protagonist now in an alien planet, with her having to hide her identity and having to go around in a world she's not really familiar with and try to help out the team. And that's all good. It's just that it's missing the excitement, it's missing the fast pace that made the first one so enjoyable, and that really bugged me. I just couldn't really help it. And I kind of got the mystery. I kind of got, yeah, I know it's you. But, I mean, that's all, when all is said and done, I feel like if it was a faster pace, yeah, I would have loved it a lot more than I did, because there's a lot to admire about this, just like Welcome to the Dark House. That's why it's only at number 9. And also, oftentimes, I don't read a lot of horrible books in the year, so my top 10 worst videos, they're often kind of hard to put together. I often have more material for the best. But anyway, moving on. Number 8. Number 8 is another sequel, and it's called The Sleeping Prince by Melinda Salisbury, and it's the sequel to The Sin Eater's Daughter, which was in my worst list a couple years back. What I liked the least about The Sin Eater's Daughter was, well, its sense of incest, as well as its completely slow-paced and claustrophobia, being confined to mostly just in a castle with very little adventure, as well as an epilogue that removed any real tension that the cliffhanger brought up. So I was really hesitant to continue on to The Sleeping Prince, but there was a new point of view, so I thought maybe this is a chance to start fresh, and these covers are undeniably gorgeous. Maybe I'll just see. And, well, I like Aaron's story better. It's just that I guess what I like the least about these stories is they're just very slow-paced, and they talk about the descriptions rather than the fear of these people and what their dreams are and what they're going through. I just finished it feeling like meh. It's better than the first one, but I really did not have a fun time with it just like the last one.
Number 7.
Number 7 is that only book that was released this year, and it's called A Kingdom for a Stage by Heidi Heilig. It was just released a few months ago, and it's the sequel to her recent book, For a Muse of Fire. And I liked that book well enough. What I liked the most about it was its structure. Its way that whenever it goes to a point of view different from the protagonist Jeddah, it uses it in an act, a script, a screenplay sort of way. And I also liked the actual musical sheets to display a song. But I guess it's just that in this book, I expected it was the finale. You see, apparently there's going to be a third book in this series, but Heidi Heilig's last series was just 2, and on Goodreads there wasn't a mention of a third book, so I thought this was it. And if this was it, then this would have been probably even lower on the list, because for all its talk about rebellion and war, it doesn't feel like a rebellion and war. It often feels like siblings and short-term friends bantering about everything. Not to mention, the main antagonist and his brother who's on the good side, like when they confront each other, there's a lamp that's on the ground. Leo says a little help, and he and Xavier, they work together on picking everything up and lighting it. And I just thought that's just awkward and weird. And also, Jeddah's powers, I just felt they weren't as utilized. There are some good parts in this book, and I feel like I really wish I knew that this was a part 2. Because for the longest time, I thought it's just not living up to its predecessor. It's not promising the finale because my expectations were higher.
Number 6.
Number 6 was a book that a friend of mine gave to me to borrow, and I feel bad all the time whenever I have to do something like this, but number 6 is this old book that I'm sure is taught in schools everywhere. And those are often either hit or supremely missed, and this is one of the latter. It's called Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. You could almost call this an anti-progressive book because I really felt there's no story it decides to cling on to other than the blind search for the old American dream. And these people are always so intoxicated and always seem to have so much money for a trip that they're supposed to be doing, but they just end up skipping out on without a care in the world. And honestly, I couldn't tell like what it was hoping to accomplish with its story other than maybe don't do drugs, or if you do drugs, utilize them the best you can. And there is honestly some clever dialogue around here, and the narrator, you can believe he's really high. When it comes to just having no story, it's really hard to move past that. It's hard to want to continue, even though it's just 200 short pages.
Number 5.
Number 5 is a book called Legendary by Stephanie Garber, and it's the sequel to her debut Caraval. I read Caraval back in March, and I thought it was a delicious treat. Legendary, I hated it so much that even though Finale, the last book in the trilogy, was released several months ago, I decided to skip out on it because it took me 2 weeks to read this book, and with a mystery that was blatantly obvious, especially since the identity of Legend had to have been one of these people that we're really on board with. It couldn't have been anything else to do properly. The joy of exploring and uncovering the mystery, it was completely missing from this one. Having Tella in the main role with Scarlett always as a side character, never really helping Tella out, saying that she slept through Tella's knocking, which was unbelievable if you ask me. all of that sense of adventure, it's just not here anymore. And I was really sad about that because I was really looking forward to finishing up this trilogy.
Number 4.
Now coming in at number 4, I've known about this book for a very long time, and it's had 2 sequels already, but now its third and supposedly final sequel is out, and that's when I finally decided I would tackle this. And I was sure I would love it, but boy, I haven't been lied to about what's going to be in a book in maybe forever. It's 3 Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake. And you know, I'm told that the sequel, One Dark Throne, has all of the stuff that we're missing. It's just that it suggests a big Hunger Games plot, and it really isn't. And also, it dumps all of these characters we don't know anything about, and not just that, 3 different regions, with different characters we have to juggle. It really drove my impatience, especially since some of these characters just weren't important off the bat, and I was very excited for the showdown, so it was hard to really care about all of these individual stories, especially the ones that just have a real bad feeling of insta-love. I give 3 Dark Crowns 1 thank you though. I at first wasn't a fan of The Hunger Games, but that book has made me go back and realize The Hunger Games is actually a very, very good book. As well as Catching Fire. Mockingjay, okay. But yeah, thanks for that at least, Kendare Blake. Maybe I'll read One Dark Throne, but I'll have to read it with a lot of hesitation.
Number 3.
And number 3 is a book called Given to the Sea by Mindy McGinnis. And she's written a lot that I'm interested in, like Not a Drop to Drink, A Madness So Discreet, The Female of the Species, Heroine. I guess I just chose to read Given to the Sea as my first look into her, just because the cover was gorgeous, but it was the lowest rated on Goodreads. There have been a lot of low rated books on Goodreads that I've loved, but this one I really should have paid attention. There were so many character transitions as this book was going on, it almost felt like I was having a seizure at one point or another. We go from Kosa to Vincent to Wit to Dara, just way too many times, 85 times throughout this short book. It took me 2 weeks to finish this, and that is primarily because, as interesting as its premise is about a girl destined to return to the sea, it spends very little and an unacceptable amount of time about her pondering what it's going to be like to actually drown. It focuses way too much on a romance that is hard for us to grasp when we're constantly being told we have to jump from one place to another. Spending too much time in the library, as much as I love doing that, it's hard to read about someone doing that for most of the time. Kosa's guards often fell asleep from guarding her as she read and did some scholarly research, and I could see where they were coming from. Given to the Sea was a big reading slump maker.
Number 2.
The number 2 spot goes to my first DNF in over 4 years. I got halfway through this book and realized I just couldn't take it anymore. This is Something Borrowed by Emily Giffin. I only read it because it was in my basement and my mom had read it, and she had written down that it was entertaining and a quick read, even if it was unoriginal. But it was anything but quick and entertaining, and anything but good at that. This book really hasn't aged well, especially on my part. The protagonist, Rachel White, she ends up doing something in the first chapter that's very unsympathetic, and I wish that there were just more chapters for us to really get to know her before she does this. And it was like all the excitement was in that one chapter, just like The Sleeping Prince, and the rest of it was just pondering that idea and making it very, very boring, especially when I could kind of predict one way or another this is going to go bad. And also, she complains about her job at a law firm, and yes, it sounds boring to us, but there's no real fear about money. It was a romance book that just did one little idea and way overly stretched it. Everything just seemed repeat, repeat, repeat. None of the characters were interesting. None of them were sympathetic. So yeah, but there's one other book, and I actually feel really sorry about it being on the list, but I have to be completely honest.
Number 1.
Now, a little thing about number 1 first. My dad actually recommended this book to me. It's actually from his favorite author of all time. In fact, we have a bookshelf down here that's full of his novels. he really lives for this guy. So I finally gave this author a try, and boy, this was the wrong choice to start me off with him. It's Wilbur Smith, and number 1 is a book called Those in Peril. Basically, it's kind of like a book version of that movie Captain Phillips with Tom Hanks out in the Somalian islands, except that one is definitely a masterpiece compared to this. Now, at first, I was thinking, okay, maybe this is just going to be so-so, because there was some stuff I really did like about it, like a hostage situation that showed some real pain and torture for who was being captured and tortured. But still, there was an overly early romance and a protagonist that seemed just too indestructible. Still, the rescue was entertaining, as well as this hanging scene we see that really sent chills up me. When it says that 3 years have gone by in between sections of this book, that turned me off. But in the end I was thinking, okay, maybe this will be a 2, maybe this will be a 1.5. But here's the deal. Near the end of this book, there's a chapter that just might be the worst chapter in a book I've read in my entire life. I am not exaggerating. The characters end up doing something to one of the antagonists. And yes, he's an antagonist, but he's like the confused, likable antagonist. But my point is that these people, they end up doing something to him that is just so sadistic, so cruel, so inhumane, and so irredeemable that I wanted to try to go to law school so that I could one day become a judge and sentence people like these to prison without parole. Because honestly, it was a despicable thing to do, and even more despicable to not condemn it. And because of that, I just thought, there's no way I can recommend this book ever in my life, and there's no way I can ever forgive it. So yeah, I'm really sorry, Dad, if you ever see this. I mean, there are some stuff I liked about it. I honestly did. And I love sharing books that I loved with you. I really hope you don't take this the wrong way. I really don't. Maybe next year I'll try a different Wilbur Smith book. Because if it's just this one thing that made it this bad that it had to take the #1 spot, then maybe just there's one without it that will be better. Some of those books, though, they're very long to the point of intimidation. So, there you have it. Those are my top 10 worst books that I read this year, and in about a week, I'm going to be doing my top 10 best and top 10 worst movies of the year list. And those ones are going to be ones that were released in 2019. But first, I feel there are about 3 or 4 more movies I have to see, maybe 5, before I really make that list. So I would love to know if there are any movies you think would be good for me to see before I get to that list. So yeah, I'm gonna start viewing and start getting to the theater, so I'm looking forward to it. And I hope you enjoyed my video. I hope you enjoyed both these videos, and I'll see you really soon, okay? Okay, bye and happy holidays.